What is up? It's Ian Allison for SBL. Did you know that we recently did a thing here at SBL? A 3-day online summit right smack dab in the middle of July. I believe it was the 15th, 16th, and 17th of July. It was called Bass Space 2022. Was it the most incredible thing that I've ever been a part of? Maybe it was. It was unreal how the whole event came together. We had all of these guests and artists doing master classes, lessons, gear run-throughs, interviews. Unreal. Who am I talking about? I'm talking about John Patitucci, Divinity Rocks. I'm talking about Chuck Rainey. I'm talking about Billy Sheehan. I'm talking about Tony Levin. Oh, I'm talking about Blue to Tiger, Gail Ann Dorsey. The list goes on and on. It was unreal. And hopefully you got to be a part of it. But look, I got a lot of messages of people saying, oh, Ian, I'm doing something else. I'm up at the cabin. I'm doing a gig, right? All of these people have reached out to us at SBL and said, but what if I wasn't able to check out the recordings? I have good news for you. Check it out. These recordings are going to be available, but only until August 3rd. How do you get access to these recordings from Bass Space 2022? You got to sign up. If you haven't signed up to be an SBL member, now is the time. If you sign up before August 3rd is the cutoff. You will get access to all of these recordings. In addition, dude, to a $50 off coupon for a yearly membership. And it is so worthwhile. Now, if you're on the fence going, I hear him saying that it's worthwhile, but is it really worthwhile? Let me tempt you even further by giving you an episode of the pod today where it is going to be me interviewing the great Chuck Rainey. Do we talk about Steely Dan? Do we talk about how he had to turn his body slightly and slap in the chorus of Peg? We just might. So also check it out. I recorded a YouTube video, Greatest Basslines Ever, episode 5, going through Peg, talking about Chuck Rainey, in addition to this amazing summit that we did, Bass Space 2022. And look, you can go check that out on YouTube. And obviously you're going to be able to see the Chuck Rainey video here. That's what we're going to do right after this. But if you want more, if you're like, whoa, were all the sessions sort of like that? Yes. Inspiration forever and real tangible things that you can work on in your playing. I'm telling you, unbelievable. I want to go back and rewatch all that stuff. In fact, I might just do that after this. So look, without further ado, here we go. It's my interview, which I was blown away to get to do with the legendary Chuck Rainey. I'm just so thrilled. I've been a big fan for a long time. Really thrilled to have you on. So thanks so much for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Man, it's my pleasure. It's very kind to hear those words. Thank you.
So this list of artists that you've played for over your career is staggering. I mean, you can't even sum it up. I mean, I'm going to say some of these words. I mean, we've got Aretha Franklin, Steely Dan, Etta James, Joe Cocker, Quincy Jones, Dizzy, Donny Hathaway, Bob Marley, Billy Preston, Sonny Rollins, Ringo Starr. I mean, just to scratch the surface. But what I want to know from you, my first question is, what is a record of an artist that you've worked on that maybe isn't on your highlight reel that in your mind should be?
Well, now that's a very interesting question because I've been around the barns so many times.
Yeah.
That's a hard question to answer right off the bat. I kind of think something like that if I give it some thought. Now, I also, too, during my career, I have not been, like when I do, I work so much. When I go home, I don't want to hear any music. I just want the wife, baby, and the dog.
Yeah.
And so I don't follow what it has to catch up to me. People have to tell me, although I do recognize what I've done mostly. But to answer your question, it's kind of hard. I think that Marlena Shaw's record, Who Is This Bitch Anyway?
Yeah.
Was a wonderful record, except that I think it was a United Artists record, but it was only marketed in Japan. People in the States are not aware of the record. Now, I've been very fortunate to go to Japan with Marlena many times, to the Blue Note, to the, to a major supper club to perform with her. And a very popular, successful record. And probably should have got more attention here. Etta James also did an album. I'm trying to figure whether it was a Jerry Wexler or an Alan Toussaint production, but it was only heard in Japan. Very good record. Excellent record. Vice versa can be said for projects coming from other countries. Like I did 2 projects with Miwa Yoshida, Japanese singer. I thought the record was done very, very well. The rhythm section was great. Omar Hakim on record, Harvey Mason on the other one.
Yes.
Ralph McDonald, David Benoit, David T. Walker. The musicians were just excellent. But, of course, it was only marketed in Japan.
Right.
So I probably won't go any further because sometimes it takes a little while sometimes.
Oh yeah, no worries. I mean, I'm just so fascinated, because you're a session player. I just thought obviously they're the big names and the big hits, but I wondered if there was something that you sort of thought never got enough, enough due. I've got to ask you a question about Aretha too. I mean, I'm a huge Aretha fan, like so many people out there, and I want to know what in your mind set Aretha Franklin apart from other singers that you maybe worked with. Is there something special about Aretha that you could talk about?
Well, everybody has their fingerprint.
Yeah.
Everybody can walk and everybody can run, but they all walk and run a little different.
Right.
Aretha, one thing that I really appreciated about Aretha was that she was very clear verbally in what she sang about. She didn't just holler or scream, which a lot of female singers that she influenced, they do. They just holler. And sometimes it's very hard to distinguish words. Aretha was very clear. And she only did things when she felt it. Whereas a lot of singers like her, they do things that they don't feel, but they do it because they think that the public appreciates that.
Of course, yes.
Shirley Caesar is another one of those, Reverend Shirley Caesar, to where she's very specific, literally. You can understand what she says, and she only does it when she feels it, if that makes sense to you.
So like an authenticity that comes through for her.
True.
Yeah.
Now, Aretha was very, very spiritual, and that's her background. And there's a whole lot to say about gospel music, especially when it comes to the Pentecostal gospel style of performance. And when you're young and you come up in that environment, you understand things that are hard to word describe about music. So the feel of a song, like you talked about Aretha, if another singer and another rhythm section play the exact same song in the same key and the same time signature, there would be a major difference if they didn't both come from the same background.
Right.
And like if it didn't come from that background, I'm talking about from an early age, basically for most people at an early age, then when you do the same song and when you do it a particular way, a tempo is chosen that fits the time. Because on Monday, the tempo is one way, but on Wednesday, you got to bump it up a little or slow it down, depending upon who's in charge.
Yes.
The person in charge is very important, but they make these decisions based upon they're gifted with the ability to do that with music. But Aretha and Shirley Caesar, very, very special in that when they sit down to play, you hear them. Now, there are other female players like Roberta Flack, what's her name, Carole King, even to a certain point, Carly Simon.
Yeah.
When they sit down to the piano alone to demonstrate a song or to sing a song, their fingerprint is coming from a place that's different from someone else doing the same material.
Of course,
But
yes.
Aretha, she's not the only gifted. I mean, she's very gifted, don't get me wrong. But she's not the only one.
Right.
James Cleveland had 2 or 3 Arethas in his choir when we did that album. You go across the nation, you go across, and there are, I wouldn't say a lot of Arethas. They don't come a dime a dozen.
Yeah.
But she was just a person that just stood out because she had a label that believed that they can make money, and which they did. You know, there were other. I'll just offer this information, my feel. Marty Joseph was a female singer from Louisiana, and Maggie Bell was a white performer from Ireland. Boy, let me tell you, they could get it. They could get it.
Yeah.
And they have the same rhythm section.
Right.
Now, when you have the same rhythm section all the time, it's for a reason. Because those guys are used to working together, which is part of Atlantic Records' secret for a while. They use the same people all the time.
Yes.
The same with CBS and Warner Brothers.
Right.
You find all the same names on everybody's records because the producer finds a group of people that work very well with the artist. See, sometimes you have to work with an artist you don't like or care for.
Sure.
But it's all about the music. Sometimes you got to work with an artist that doesn't particularly care for you. But the producer's job is to be successful with the best music. Now, when they go out on tour, they can have or they can do whatever it is they want.
That's right.
Because most artists usually carry friends.
Right.
People that
Yes.
they used to. But when you get into the recording studio, it changes a bit. You have to be successful.
Absolutely. And in terms, I mean, so you were one of those people in the studio that were called on time and time again by producers to be successful. I mean, and you've played on over 1,000 records. You've been mentioning all these names. It's not just Aretha that is wonderful, but all of these other names. Can you tell us that is something that you've learned that could help an aspiring session player that maybe wants to jump into that world to be one of those on-call people? What's a piece of advice you could give?
Well, everybody has to realize that things have changed. The recording industry will never be the way it was.
Right.
However, that's not to say that one's ambition can be stopped, because once things stop, they begin again, maybe in another way.
Yeah.
As an older fellow, I like to say that. I think that it's very important for whatever the change is. I don't particularly, it's not that I don't care for the change. It's just that I'm not at a point in my career or my life where I'm going to start reinventing the wheel, my wheel.
Sure.
Attacking learning curves. I don't have to. I'm fortunate that way.
You don't. That's right.
But to say one thing for sure is, it's very important, and usually young people don't realize this until they get older. But time being, a lot of people who can't function the best, I mean, I shouldn't say that. Everybody that's not good, just for this conversation,
yes,
can play music. You know, you learn to play things on the piano and blah, 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 blah. But in the world that I came through, it's a little different, although you have to play. But the main thing that I see in looking at my past is I had a mindset and a love from an early age for how to handle my behavior in public, my responsibility, and what it is I was doing. And it's important. You know, as a bass player, you have a responsibility. It ain't no chord until the bass player plays.
That's right. Yes.
And so, and music is made up of chords.
Yes.
But at the same time, it's very, very difficult to understand the in reality of responsibility, because you have to get there by experience.
Of course.
You got to fail. You got to see what works, what doesn't work, how other people, how it works for them, how it doesn't work. So many great musicians I come through that wouldn't get a second job in that same social environment because of their behavior.
Right.
And the behavior has a lot to do with the not understanding what the responsibility is. It's not your time to blow your horn. You're not blowing your horn. You're being a part of a unit.
Absolutely.
Let other people decide that you're blowing your horn.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I have been very fortunate, but I tell every young bass player that it's my fingerprint. But as I look at what it's all about, it's about the song.
Yes.
So if you love music and you have experience in playing a lot of different music, I played the viola, I played the trumpet, baritone horn, I played the guitar.
Yes.
So I understand how those other instruments kind of fit into an organized situation. I also understand who the leader is.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Now, some leaders are good, some are not so good. It ain't that you got to go home every night with the leader or stuff like that. Sometimes that's true, but I'm just saying that a lot of times people lead well, sometimes they don't lead well.
Sure.
But in this country, you're able to interconnect with different social environments. So where if this don't work out, if you're in New York, there's certainly someplace else you'll fit in. Because there's so many clicks, you know, especially if you can play.
Yes.
So to answer your question, I got to think it's important to be in love with what you do.
Yeah.
I mean, to where it's all you do. Don't like to use this phrase, but in the real world, people should understand what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's clear. And so what I'm getting ready to say is, you know, at the very beginning in loving music, I became a music whore.
Yeah.
Meaning, I played every chance I could.
Absolutely.
I loved it. I did what I did. And then I graduated to a music prostitute.
Okay.
And because I learned how to do my music well, to listen well. You know, then time goes by to where you begin to make more money and you're still a music whore in a way, but now you channel what, when, where, and how. Because a lot of things that you went through that were negative, you don't want to go through again.
That's
because
right.
everybody learns its experience. 2 weeks ago, Berkeley gave me a concurred Doctor of Music degree.
Congratulations. Yes, congratulations. That's awesome.
Now, I appreciate that very, very much because it took a committee of about 15 people to sit down and research and decide to give me the highest academic award that they offer.
Incredible.
Now, that's all great. And of course, I had to give a speech.
Yeah.
In my capital group and stuff like that, which I did. I enjoyed doing that. I've always done a lot of music ed on the side, you know, in textbooks and seminars and stuff like that. And the older I get, the more I realize that from the very, very beginning, too many people that don't have talent are trying to be in this business.
Sure.
Now, that's okay. That's all fair because we're in a situation where everybody can do what they got to do.
Right.
You sort of have to live by your mindset, which I mentioned a little earlier.
Yes.
My mindset was music all the time.
Yeah.
Of course, I've had little intimate jobs as a professional because I had to.
Sure.
Didn't last long. But the thing is, my mindset was how to get along in organized situations.
Yes.
Now, if it's not organized and you don't get along, that's another horse of another color. But if
That's
it's
right.
organized, if it's organized, you have to get along in a situation because you're there because somebody thought that you would aid and abet the end product.
Yes.
You know, so I would say that number one, nowadays it's very, very hard if you're 30 years old and you have access to a computer, you can live your world in your head.
That's right.
Whereas you're living it in your head because you're watching other people actually succeed at what's going on. So it gets to be very, very difficult if you go past loving what you do.
Yeah.
And because, like I began to say, was a lot of negative things went over my head. I didn't. If it didn't go over my head, I saw it, I recognized it, and you let it go.
Yes.
And went right back to music.
Because you love this craft and you love music. Yes.
My mother used to say, "Son, do not complain about what you're doing because I have to 9 to 5 it every day."
Yeah. Great perspective.
And a lot of what I do, I don't particularly care for. And she had a good job, a good professional job, but it was work. She said, "Son, you having fun."
Yeah, of course. Yeah, she sees you out there killing it on the bass. Well, let me ask you this then. You mentioned you're a multi-instrumentalist. I know that you've played horn, guitar. Curious too, when I've watched your instructional materials, you talk so much about chords, and you've played double stops on the bass with Steely Dan, with Aretha, with everyone. I'm curious, in your mind, how important are chord tones and arpeggios to the nitty-gritty of bass playing?
When it comes to playing things that are basically in the treble clef on the instrument, now I'm getting into that baritone thing that I remember. And how is a child playing the viola, how that, when you go up there, it's just like it sort of kind of makes you want to go, wow.
Hey, what's that middle voice happening? The part that you play, there's that beautiful phrase that you play in Rock Steady, like up in that kind of mid zone, right? Almost seems like an answer to the ga-na-na with the guitar as you're playing down low, and then you come up and play that beautiful thing that goes to the third of A. Is that what you're hearing when you write parts like that?
No, actually, what I'm hearing right there is Cornell Dupree. You see, like Cornell and I played so much together. We played so many years.
Yeah.
Now, Cornell played the bass before he played the guitar.
Yeah, okay.
And I played the guitar before I played the bass. So rhythmically, we were always dancing together. We were best friends. We were roommates. I love that. And so it was just a matter of like having a conversation. Just having a conversation. You do it because you feel it, and then here's somebody to hold your hand. And
Oh, I love that. Yeah, so here I had this highfalutin idea that this is this orchestration you're hearing in your head, but in real time on the session, you're bouncing off your friend. You're bouncing off your friend's ideas.
Because they didn't write nothing.
Yeah.
All she did was sit down at the piano, teach the song, and then we just played. Maybe a riff would write out a chord chart just so that he would have, because he was a designated orchestrator.
Oh.
So the orchestrator has to know the chord progressions of the song before they start putting horns and strings, if they want to do it.
Oh, man.
Like, that's what's great, too, about someone like the band that Marlena Shaw had.
Yeah.
That we went to Japan 8 years in a row with her. The same rhythm section. And a certain bond between musicians that have played so many times together.
Yes.
Other than with her. Me and Larry and David and Harvey Mason, we have played so much together.
Right.
We happen to have played on that album. So, of course, when you get to it, it makes it very special because we know each other.
Yes.
And we played the original music, and we also have playing this now every year. So you know the music.
Absolutely.
You know the music. And
then that playfulness can come out. You
want to bring to the public what they heard and feel on the record that they bought and why they're spending that money in the club. And it's a first class gig too. But the thing is, like, me and Cornell, we were a team.
Yeah, right. Oh, it's so cool to hear that captured on the record. I mean, so we're talking about these chord tones. We're talking about you as a multi-instrumentalist, but something else I would be remiss not to mention is your groove and feel. Your shuffle feel is one of the best shuffle feels of any bass player that I've ever heard. And I, until very recently, was not aware of your finger technique, of your right hand technique, where you were playing mostly with one finger, right? Going through the string and then back, almost sort of flicking the string. And I'm so curious to you, how much of your signature sound and groove do you feel like comes from that right hand technique?
Well, I kind of think it's my fingerprint.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times the things that I do play, unless you're a Jerry Jamot kind of bass player, and Jerry Jamot is very, very good with his two fingers.
Right,
very,
sure.
very good. Back and forth. Whereas I basically could not hold a pick, number one. As a guitar player, I couldn't hold a pick. And as a bass player, I couldn't hold a pick. I kept dropping the pick. And so then I have always heard the bass and upright bass. And
Yes.
upright bass players play with two fingers or one
Right.
finger. So I would think that by number one, too, Jerry Jamot is a very strong man, like James Jamerson. They were both not the same size either, but very strong. And they really pull hard on the string. They really pull hard. And with me, I never really pull hard. I found that I felt better by playing with a softer touch. Not to say that I play with a mild touch. I do play with a firm touch, but I sort of don't. And plus, like, if I weren't a drummer, if I weren't a bass player, I would be a drummer.
Yes.
So rhythm is all about how I'm playing, and what really, and other bass players that listen to what I'm doing, unless it comes natural, don't do it.
Right.
But with me, it comes natural. That when I play doom, boom, doom, doom, boom, doom, doom, boom, doom, I have a tendency to go boom, 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 with that little boy kicking back.
Yes.
But the kick back is not as strong
Sure.
as the downbeat. And it's just a habit. It's my fingerprint. Now, of course, I'm not the only one. But of course, I'm just saying that a lot of people don't realize that, as I mentioned earlier, we all run, we all walk, we all talk, we all do that, but we do it differently.
Yes.
And there's a place for everybody. I've had good friends that spent most of their career trying to play like me, but don't understand is I don't understand what you're doing. Because even if you think you're playing like me, it sounds like you.
Right. Of course. Yes.
So the thing is, I was inspired basically to play. Part of my inspiration to play is by listening to drummers. Because, like I said, I loved the marching band when I was in college and in high school. Boy, I was a marching band fiend. And my granddaughter and my oldest boy went to Florida A&M and went to Marching 100. And that says a lot if people understand rhythm and if they understand
Absolutely.
the HBC band. So like I'm a rhythm person, but my experience in loving to hear, especially the baritone horn in the brass ensemble unit, and then remembering as a child, one thing I did like about the viola was that feeling of that went through my fingers up my arm on playing certain notes. Now that I think back on it. But I'm a big freak for music.
Yes.
And again, your one of the questions you asked me was advice for people to find out who they are. And it's okay to try and emulate. I've been trying to emulate James Jamerson all my career.
Yeah, right. We all have.
So,
Right?
so whatever comes out my way. But James Jamerson was one of the person that had me thinking, because in playing Motown music when I was living in New York, to feed myself or keep myself clean, I had to play Motown music, and I had to play those bass lines, and that's how I learned how I look at the instrument now.
Yes.
And I still say it's the easiest instrument to play if you look at the chord. On your bass, you can play 1, 3, 10.
Yes.
It's a shape.
Yep, you can see that shape. You can move that shape around. Yes.
Full minor chord, and you can play a full dominant chord. The augmented and diminished tones are just a fingering graph like Chinese checkers.
That's right.
Whole tone scale is every other square if you got frets on your bass.
That's right. Yes.
These things only become important if you're taking a solo, or if you're reading a chord chart and you see an augmented chord,
right,
and nothing's written, or if you see a diminished chord, what to play. Now, those chords never last longer than the bar.
That's
basically.
Right. That's true. Yes.
So all you got to do is play at least 3 notes, the tonic twice, and then if it's diminished, you play the tonic once and 2, 3.
Yes.
Or not 2, 3, but 1, 3, 1, 3. The way the fingering is, all you need is 3 notes,
yes,
rather than to try and fumble over playing notes from your abstract idea.
Yes, right.
About what you think is playing, rather than looking at what the chord is.
Yeah.
It's just the whole thing is to learn the neck of the bass. If you're playing a fretless bass, God bless you.
Best of luck to you. Yes.
If you're playing a fretted bass, you have margin of error on every note that you play.
Right.
Because between the 2 frets. Just understand, the more and more you play that bass, the more you realize that it's easier than you thought.
Yeah.
And what I did was to always tell people, I said, most of my career, most of it, with the exception of working maybe with Aretha or Donny Hathaway, I sit down at a chart when I'm reading, and I put my thumb, this is the head stop, and this is the neck.
Yes.
And I put my thumb right behind the G.
Yeah.
Put my thumb right behind the G. So here with my hand open, I've got, number 1, this is, put it by G. This is the nut. So I got everything here covered.
Right.
And then if it's written above the clef, all I have is a swivel.
Yes.
So I will never leave my thumb in place, so I can play everything that's written. Except for someone writing a solo or working with Danny Hathaway, but you have to change position to play it, which very seldom happens. So for a bass player, that look upright bass players too, the same thing. Everything that's in the bass clef is right here, with the thumb behind the G.
Yeah.
It's right there. And so when you see players doing all this, it's show, which is part of what you. And after you do this for a while, then you want to do this because you can.
That's right.
Because what's here is the exact same thing here.
Yes.
Especially on what string, like if you in G, let's say you're in C right here.
Yeah.
You're playing C right here. Whatever you do here, it's the same thing right here.
Right. Sure.
The same tone, the same everything. But to do all this and to go, and of course, if you're taking a solo, I do understand, but basically, you see upright players, it's a show band. Whereas you see the real good, well, I shouldn't say that, but whereas you see everything that's needed is right here.
Connected
so
down,
you start wanting to do this, learn what's here because that's all that's required.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, and that's great advice for reading too, so you don't have to constantly be looking at where you're going and back at the chart, right? I mean, if you got it right here.
Sometimes you have to, but now the more and more you do it, you get a chance. So once you do it here, I know I've always looked at whatever it is I'm reading something, I'm able to see it and to see just about a bar ahead.
Yes.
So I have to change position. I play a lot with my thumb on the E string or on the B, I should say.
Yes.
On the B. I do it because I've got a big hand. So a lot of people try that, but it don't work. I said, why do you keep trying that? It ain't working. I do it because I got a big hand. You got a small hand. Victor Wooten's hand is like my hand is like that.
Yes. Yes.
Small hand. Well, you listen to him play, and my God, you think that the man had 9-inch fingers.
He's got these big hands. Yeah, right.
Bailey. It's a matter of finding out who you are.
Yeah.
And what do you do best by? A lot of teachers teach not to use your thumb. I say, why?
Sure.
You got a lesson here. You want the student to successfully play the lesson. 2, 3, 4. Don't even look at it. What you want to hear is do dee do dee do dee do dee do dee do dee do dee. You don't want to look at it the way you think he should be doing it. He's successfully doing it.
Yes.
So I always think that all young people realize that it takes this beautiful tree in front of my house, and we just love this tree. We've been here 10 years, and it's grown almost 8 feet. The fall is beautiful. I wish I could show it to you.
Oh, man. I'd love to see it.
Around October, it begins to turn beautiful. It's a maple tree. Because it turns beautiful colors. And it takes about 3 months for the colors to really be beautiful and to fall to the ground and be bare.
Yeah.
When spring comes, you see the little buds come out. You don't really see it. But when you do see it, the first thing you know, the buds are bigger.
Yeah, right.
Now, this is life. The same way we're playing an instrument or doing anything, as a matter of fact. You can wake up in the morning and want to be whoever you think you want to be, go online and see who you think other people are. But the people that you idolize, the people that you want to be, are people who are out there playing, doing things. Steely Dan's going to be here next week. And everybody there, basically, if they're musicians, they came up listening to their music.
Well, actually, I'd love to ask you a question about Asia. There's that great making of documentary where you talk about on Peg, we're getting to the bridge and you want to break out the thumb and do some slapping, but they maybe weren't too keen on it. And there's a great story I saw you tell of there was a little partition, maybe you kind of swivel the body a little bit so that you believed, this is what I wonder anyway, I want to ask you, did you believe that technique and that sound was the right thing for the tune, and that if they just heard it and didn't see you actually doing it, that they would believe it too?
Well, one thing I want everybody to really know, I have talked about this a bit, was I'm on a job. I'm on a job for hire. And I'm on a job with a producer that hires me all the time. And I'm working, talking about Asia, I'm working with an artist that I spent a lot of time with.
Yes.
And as I mentioned earlier, mindset and behavior and responsibility are very, very important when you're working for a major record company, a major producer, and a major artist.
Of course.
Your social attitude and your political attitude is also very, very important. And to come by all of that, you have to understand you spend enough time with these people to understand how they think. Donald did not like slapping. Yeah, I've been told that earlier. Every time I had tried it. The only reason I did it at that time was that Jeff Picaro was laying down the drum track. Yeah. And Jeff and I had done many, many recordings together where I did slap. And I knew that they were not listening to me.
Interesting.
Because the whole thing was they were looking for a drum track. And so they have the rhythm section play. They want a drum track that they're going to work with. As you notice, Asia has 7 drummers on it. Yes, right. All 7 drummers did a whole album. So it's like, I never question why. My aim was for the bank to be happy, the wife to be happy, the dog to be happy, and the baby.
That's right. That's right.
And I was enjoying what I was doing.
Yes.
Even if I was doing some things that didn't make sense. So I didn't really care. All I did was because Jeff kept saying it. It took about an hour for us to play, to get a drum track that they could feel that that's just the way they worked. And Jeff would always go.
He was egging you on, man. He was egging you on. That's
so
great.
Basically, as things go, even if you're not listening to something, it's in your ear. The brain is uh, well, in their case was when it came my turn, I was second to play bass line over the song, work with it. Meantime, the guitar player and the piano player are getting their shit together. If you follow what I'm saying,
sure.
Or what they want to do. So now, when we got to the bridge, Donald said, well, it doesn't sound quite the way that it did before, and blah, blah, blah. And Jeff said he was slapping it. So I did put they had little things that separate the amplifier from the rest of the room. So I did turn around because they're not listening to me, they're not looking at me. The three of them are looking and listening for a drum track, which I did not understand, but I didn't have to understand.
Sure.
I was being paid double scale, and I was working for them a lot.
Yes.
And I didn't care.
And you must have thought that it was the right thing for the tune. You thought, Jeff.
You know, that's why he was saying, just to make a difference.
Yeah. They just needed to hear it.
You do it when you can, and when you can't, you don't.
I love it. I mean, and Chuck, speaking of your sound and your feel, you're speaking a lot about voice and finding voice. Something that I think is so fascinating about your careers. I mean, I've seen all these videos, I've seen all these photos, and you've played so many different bass guitars over the years. I mean, I'm talking Spector, Ken Smith, of course, Fender, Exotic. The interesting thing to me is that through all of that, you still sound like you. You have a thumbprint no matter what instrument you play. If I close my eyes, I feel like it's Chuck Rainey. But the thing that I want to ask you is if you could pick one. This is for the nerdy bass community out here that wants to know. They want to know the answers to these hard-hitting questions. What is your desert island bass? What's the one that you connect with the most?
Well, right now I'm playing a exotic bass 5-string. Made in Japan, distributed in Van Nuys, California. I probably am more embodied with this instrument now because, number one, I've had a lot of experience with playing the basses you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Now, the bass that I started playing was a gift from my mother back in 1961. It was a Fender Precision.
Yeah.
And I
do you remember the
that
color?
Huh?
Was it a Sunburst? Sunburst bass?
Sunburst, yeah. It had, I don't know what kind of strings it had on it, but I played that bass and the strings stayed on it for 2 years.
Yeah.
It was back in 1961. And then when I did change strings, I put labella strings on it. Mm-hmm. And basically, I played labella strings all my career. Bob sends me the strings whenever I do need them, but I don't change strings a lot.
Yes.
Once I start playing the 5-string bass, which now has been maybe like the last 12 years, I started toying around with the other instruments that you just mentioned.
Yes.
Along with Spector. I like my Spector bass. It was like a new girlfriend.
Yes.
But I was married to a Fender.
Yeah, right. Sure.
When I played, my first attempt to play a 6-string bass was with a Ken Smith, and it was an extramarital affair.
Yes.
So after playing it for a while, I went back. I think I went to another 6-string bass. I can't remember what it was right now. It changed me. It was another instrument, but I always went back to my Fender.
Chuck, let me ask you this. I asked my Instagram community if they could ask you a question, what question would they ask? And there were some really good ones, but the one that struck me the most, and I'm so curious about the answer to this question too, is what would the current Chuck Rainey tell young Chuck Rainey before his first gig?
My father was my hero. And my daddy always talked about thinking. I would say things and he would say, well, have you thought about it? And I would say, yeah. And he would say, well, what were you thinking? The blah, 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 blah. And And he was a listener more to say. Just by asking me had I thought about it, I began to reminisce on what I was thinking, and then I answered my own question.
Right.
And my daddy was a steel worker. But he was a piano player as a hobby. He never had a gig. He wrote songs. He played jazz. You know, Art Tatum was his favorite piano player.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And he just did it for fun. He was a hard-working steel worker. By the time I got up in age to where I was playing the guitar, he was a bit disappointed because he had spent money on a trumpet, money on college, and here I was playing the damn guitar. And
yes,
he playing, and I must have been about 20. And he said it's going to take you just as much time to be a good guitar player as it did to be a good trumpet player. And I was a good trumpet player. And I've been playing that trumpet for maybe 7 years.
Yeah.
So it takes you just as much time with experience. I've been in marching bands. I've done concerts. I've been in with that trumpet. And so he says it's going to take you just that, that amount of time. And I said, and you're getting older. And I don't think you're that good. He said, but I didn't think you were that good when I bought you that trumpet.
Yeah.
But you were a child then.
Right.
Now, my father never put down what I did. But when he began to see and read all the accolades that I was getting, I remember before I left home, he couldn't understand why me. Why? And my mother would say, why not? That kind of a thing. So now as it came down to answering your question this long-winded way.
No, I love it.
Right now, I would be just like my daddy. In that I have 5 kids.
Yes.
And not one of them that I push in any direction. To be anything or to do whatever. Now, as an adult, I've learned I've had many students over the years during when I did teach. And I find that if I had 100, I did good for only maybe 15, maybe 10. And I watch parents push their child in the direction that they want them to go.
Yes.
As a teacher. I've had some conversations with parents who disagree with me. They thought that they owed it to the child to see and push. I said, I see my boys, especially the last 2, would have been great athletes, I thought. Yeah. But of course, I let them find out, what do you want to do? What do you like to do?
Yes.
Then I support what you're liking at that time. Parents have a tendency to destroy energy because they control basically the mindset of the child up to a certain age.
Yes.
And mindset is a habit. It's hard to break a habit.
Yeah.
Especially if you like the habit. It's hard to break it. And sometimes it's the wrong habit.
Right.
Because as a teacher, I've seen parents destroy a child enough to where they never get it going until they're 30.
Right.
So I would give my son, how young would I be? How young would the son be?
Right before you're going to go step on stage for that first gig.
Oh, I would have nothing to say to him. Other than if he asked me a question. Because I would always agree. That's great. While you play your butt off, wow, the band is great. So-and-so and so-and-so. Now, when you start complaining about what you see and what you think, then I can see what you're saying. But I'll say, you made that bed.
Oh, yeah.
And you had many choices to make. Once you make a bed that's rough, you get out of the bed, go make another one. Sometimes you can't.
Yes.
They just hang with it until you can change beds. Don't let your ego have you moving before you can move.
Yeah. But you are going to give young Chuck the agency to make to forge his own path.
Right.
Yeah.
You can ask Dad questions. I like to answer questions.
I
my
love
questions
that.
always allude to, well, son, what do you think?
Yes.
This
Just like
is
your
what
dad did for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You hear what I think, and sometimes you interfere or put in. I was engaged one time to a woman that I took home to meet my mother and father. My mother and father knew her. They liked her over a quarter, maybe a year or two, or whatever. And finally, me and the girl broke up over private reasons. And I remember my dad saying, and after they knew that we broke up, I remember my dad sent back and said, well, son, you weren't paying attention. And I said, what do you mean? So the first time we met her, your mother and I said that, well, I don't think this is going to last. I said, well, why didn't you say something? He said, that ain't my woman. That's your woman.
Yes.
I don't have to be right. I don't have to be wrong. I don't have to be in it. I'm in it. I ain't in it. I accept you and I support you. But he said, that ain't mine. It's yours.
Right.
But sometimes you're right for your father. With that woman, I was 30 years old, almost 30. You know.
But I love this idea, Chuck, that you said even earlier in the interview that you don't really like to give advice. You want to answer questions. And, and you just shared, thank you so much for sharing about your dad, because that gives everybody such insight into who you are. Is you're not going to force your advice or opinions or assertions on a situation. You're going to react. You're going to support. You're going to clap. And then you're going to let these people, these artists, your even your young self forge their own path. And I think that's a really cool place to be. And I just have to say, this has been so meaningful to me. Thank you so much. I'm a huge fan. I followed your work for many, many years. At SBL, we're huge fans. So you taking the time to do this is really a gift to the community. So thank you very much for being here today.
Man, you're so welcome. I thank you for asking me. I enjoy it, I'm sorry I was a bit late. I'm not computing savvy. I'm spoiled.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for going through the trouble to get it working. It's really a gift for us. The legendary Chuck Rainey with an amazing interview, giving us the insight that we desire, this unbelievable career. Chuck, this has been incredible. Thank you so much for being here today.
I thank you so much for thinking of me.
Chuck.
It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Oh, thank you so much, man. It's a gift for us. So thank you so much.